Welcome to Labels Don't Define Us, the podcast where we share real stories of life beyond diagnosis. Here, we challenge the stigma, break down the labels, and celebrate the strength it takes to live with and thrive beyond mental health conditions. Each week, you'll hear inspiring conversations, practical tools, and honest voices that remind us all a diagnosis may be part of your story, but it does not define who you are. I'm Sarah, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin today's episode. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the Labels Don't Define Us podcast. I'm so glad you're here. This is a safe space, a hopeful space, and a community where we remind each other of something really important. You are not defined by a diagnosis. Maybe you've been given a label: depression, anxiety, ADHD, bipolar disorder, PTSD, or something else. And maybe, when you first heard that word, it felt heavy, like someone stamped your whole identity with a single word. But here's the truth. A diagnosis is not the whole story. It's just one part of who you are. You're still you, with your talents, your dreams, your humor, your creativity, your kindness. Labels can help us understand, but they don't get to define us. Why this podcast exists. So why this podcast? Why labels don't define us? Because too many of us feel like once we're given a diagnosis, people see only that. Friends, family, coworkers, even society. It can feel like the label is louder than your personality, your experiences, or your strengths. I want to change that. This podcast exists to share stories of hope, resilience, and thriving beyond the label, to remind you that you are never alone, to explore practical tools and inspiring journeys from people who've walked the same road. It's not about pretending everything is easy. It's about showing that life with a diagnosis can still be full of meaning, joy, connection, and growth. How a diagnosis can feel like a label. When I talk to people who've been diagnosed, a common theme is that first moment. You sit in a doctor's office or maybe a therapist's chair, and they say, "You have," and then comes the word. For some, it's a relief. Finally, there's an explanation for what they've been feeling. For others, it's overwhelming, even frightening. And often, the world reacts in ways that don't help. People might say, "Oh, she's bipolar," or "he's just anxious," as if that's the whole person. That's when the label can start to feel like a box. But here's the shift we're making together. A label can describe what you're experiencing, but it can't capture everything you are. You are bigger than that. Now, I'm going to share a few different short stories to bring this to life. Story 1, bipolar and creative power. There's a woman named Sarah who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in her 20s. At first, she felt like her life was over, as if she'd never be able to have a career or a family. But over time, she learned that with support, medication, and self-care, she could live a full life. Today, Sarah is a painter. She says her art wouldn't exist without the way she experiences the world. Her diagnosis didn't erase her identity. It actually became part of her creative strength. Story 2, ADHD at work. Then there's David. He has ADHD, and for years he was told he was lazy, distracted, or too much. After finally being diagnosed, he reframed his thinking. He discovered that his high energy and ability to hyper-focus were assets, especially in fast-paced environments. Now he works in tech, where his ADHD helps him thrive. The label once made him feel less than. Now it's part of his superpower. Story 3, beyond PTSD. And let's not forget Maria, who survived a traumatic event and was later diagnosed with PTSD. She said at first she thought PTSD would define her forever. But through therapy and community, she built a new sense of identity. She mentors other survivors now. She told me, "My trauma is part of me, but it doesn't own me. I get to write the next chapters." Each of these people shows us something powerful. Life after diagnosis can be beautiful, meaningful, and full of possibility. So in this podcast, every week, we'll explore stories like these. We'll talk about the challenges, yes, but we'll also shine a light on the victories, the everyday moments of strength, and the ways people redefine themselves after a diagnosis. We'll cover topics like thriving with ADHD at work, breaking the chains of stigma, relationships and love beyond diagnosis, the role of creativity in healing, and how to build a life that feels fulfilling even when mental health is part of the journey. This isn't just about survival, it's about thriving. So, as we begin this journey together, I want you to remember something simple but powerful. You are more than your diagnosis. You are a whole person with a story, with value, and with a future worth fighting for. Thank you so much for listening to this very first episode of the Labels Don't Define Us podcast. If you found hope here, please follow the show and share it with someone who might need a reminder that labels don't define them either. I'm Sarah, and I can't wait to share this journey with you. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, a label is only a word, not your identity. Thank you for listening to Labels Don't Define Us. Remember, your diagnosis is only one chapter, not your whole story. If today's episode gave you hope or insight, please follow the podcast and share it with someone who might need it too. Together, we can break the stigma and remind the world that we are so much more than labels. Until next time, take care of yourself. And never forget, you are not defined by a diagnosis.